as a lot of us are going to be dealing with another round of rain and storms. And if you can avoid that, that's always the best bet. Now, starting out fairly quiet this morning, mostly what's going on across North Florida down through Gainesville is a little bit of fog. But what is going to happen is those showers that you see now just to the west of Tallahassee, well, they're eventually going to fill in along that I-10 corridor. So let's time it out. Not just showers, but thunderstorms and the possibility for some strong thunderstorms as well. You can see how lit up the radar is by 3 p.m. when you're getting off of work. Those are still going to be hanging around, blasting through, and some of those storms could have some gusty winds with them. They could also have some very heavy rain, and as we've already seen, the ground is saturated, so that is going to leave us with the possibility for some flash flooding. Morgan City, you're getting those thunderstorms. Baton Rouge, same thing. New Orleans, still quiet for you. Dew point at 67 degrees in New Orleans right now. It is feeling muggy out there. I know it's kind of always muggy in New Orleans, but you can definitely feel it in the air. Headed for the mid 70s today with that rain moving through, lots of cloud cover filling in. It's not going to be one of those days where the sun is shining bright most of the day, but as you notice, when those showers and storms kind of push a little bit farther south, you might get some peaks of sunshine. In general, we're looking at on and off storms throughout the day in New Orleans. Let's take a look at Mobile. You had a pretty good cluster of thunderstorms moving through earlier on. Pensacola, some of that rain around right now. This is going to continue as we head through the day. Heavy rain, lightning, storms, and some of those could be a bit on the strong side late morning into your lunchtime, into the afternoon as well, before that finally begins to clear out as we head through the later afternoon. Kelly? Because we're focusing on the next system, and it's going to bring rain to places that are already saturated, which of course is going to lead to another round of flood threats. So here's what's going on. We've got the freezing temperatures to the north. That's where we'll get to some winter weather, but we have plenty of moisture across the Gulf. So as we're heading through the late part of the week, we get that low pressure system like Jordan was just talking about, counterclockwise circulation, drawing that moisture northward out of the Gulf, the cold being pulled southward on the back end of this system. But where we are in the warm sector, we've got rain, we've got storms, and some of those could be severe, as Jordan just showed you. But even with that, we've got some heavy rain that's possible. Now, when you look at this Thursday through Saturday, you might think, well, 1 to 2 inches, that's not that much. But this is a very broad brush forecast, both the European and the American model doing the 1 to 2 inches. But that is not to say that we couldn't see some locally higher amounts ending up over places that just can't hold any more rain. So timing out your Thursday for you, you'll notice we make it through most of the day Thursday. It really starts to pick up on Friday. Your morning commute by Friday up and down the mid and lower Mississippi Valley pretty wet. We see this stretching across the Ohio River Valley by Friday afternoon and filling in across the Gulf coastal states Friday night into Saturday. So another round of showers and storms to round out the week. And again, Kelly, this could definitely bring us some issues in terms of flooding.
Rivers already either
this Tuesday. Nothing huge going on. Some de-icing happening around the Great Lakes region, but in general, we're looking at bunches of green bubbles here, which means we're not seeing a ton of delays right now, and that is the good news. Always a great idea to check that flight before you head out. You never know. Might not be weather. Maybe something mechanical is delaying those flights, or it might also be weather later in the day. Those storms blasting into New Orleans a little later this morning. Jacksonville, you'll certainly have some storms around this afternoon. Buffalo, a little bit of wintry weather. So certainly some flight delays are possible, whether you're flying across the south or across the north. Now, as mentioned, it's not just in the air where we could have some delays, although it's not looking so bad this morning with all the green means go across northeast. We could run into some slick spots, though, where you've got just a little bit of wintry weather up across portions of Maine. Generally, we're looking at a cold rain for cities like Worcester and Boston. 38 there in Boston with that rain coming down, just a bit of a breeze. As you're heading out on your morning commute, the morning rush, we should get a little bit of a break in the rain. Your lunchtime, though, especially south of Boston down into Randolph, Westwood, could have some rain around. Bedford, you're kind of on the cusp of whether that rain's going to make it all the way up. But your afternoon looking a lot better. Your afternoon rush there across this region certainly looking better than, say, the morning. We're going to have these storms continuing to fill in once again across the south, especially that I-10 corridor is going to be impacted today. The windshield wipers working overtime as these storms fill in, not just showers and regular storms, though, Jordan. We have that possibility for some severe storms today as well for cities like New Orleans and Tallahassee.
Meanwhile, if you're out west, you're going to be
alerts, as Kelly just said, and then not just today, but we're looking at the later week severe threat as well. So we're really not getting much of a break. So Thursday, we have that severe threat for places like Wichita Falls and Oklahoma City. By Friday, this is expanding. Now, I have to tell you that obviously we're still several days out. So this area will be refined. It may shift just a little bit, but generally we're looking at that risk for severe thunderstorms, which means the damaging wind gusts, the hail, and then of course some heavy rain along with that as well with the Mississippi River Valley. Now, here's our system. You can see it swirling here off the Pacific Northwest. Eventually, it's going to bring some of that unsettled weather to the West Coast, but then it also kind of bowling balls its way across the country, and eventually it ends up in the middle of the country, bringing us that risk for the severe weather for the later part of our week. So here's what's going on Thursday night. You've got those southeasterly winds pulling in the Gulf moisture, plenty of moisture. Now, where we are impacted by the dry line, that's going to add an extra element for the risk of storms. But generally, we're looking at the winds possibly gusting higher with that supercell threat. They're turning as you head up in the atmosphere. We've got warm air aloft that could put a cap on some of the storms, but that's a could. And as I mentioned, we're still several days out from this forecast, so it's something we're going to keep an eye on to kind of hone in on as we head through the next several days. Here's that storm filling in across the country as we head through Thursday into Friday. The storm's beginning to blossom and become a bit more intense across central portions of the country into the Ohio River Valley. This is something we'll be talking about pretty regularly as we head toward Thursday and Friday. It's like these coast-to-coast storms that we've been seeing for months now. Typically, you think of the severe weather, especially in the central U.S., ramping up as we head through March, but it ramped up earlier and it's not ramping down. So we got to talk about our next coast-to-coast storm too, because that's the next thing we're watching. It's going to bring more precip to the west coast that we don't need, and then the risk for severe storms later this week to the central U.S. that, again, we do not need. So let's talk about it. We've got some cold across the northern tier and, of course, the additional moisture that's pulled north along the Gulf Coast. Such a similar story that we've seen over and over again so far this year already. That low pressure system, the counterclockwise circulation around it, pulls that cold air south on the west side and really lifts that moisture northward on the east side of that storm. And where you get the cold and the moisture to interact, you get winter. But in the warm sector where we've got the instability, we've got that possibility for storms. Widespread thunderstorms, in fact, and some of those could be severe. Not to mention, and you know, when we're talking about severe, there are specific parameters. So a severe thunderstorm either has to have winds up around 58 miles an hour or hail 1 inch in diameter. But also, as we've seen, the flooding threat can be just as dangerous. The European model, broad brushing 1 to 2 inches. American model, really much of the same. But this is a very broad brush of the forecast, and we could likely see locally higher amounts out of this. So let's time it out for you. Here's Thursday, quiet much of the day. We start to see things really filling in a little bit more on the future radar Thursday night into Friday morning. So your Friday morning commute could be a bit messy in places like Springfield. By the afternoon, all up and down the Mississippi River Valley, the Ohio River Valley, we've got those showers, we've got those thunderstorms, and that continues to progress eastward through Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia, of course, places that are still trying to recover from these storms that we've been talking about since last weekend. So more rain on the way, more storms on the way, but of course, we've got you covered here on the Weather Channel. Ooh, you don't want to miss it. Catch an all-new episode of Heavy Rescue Sunday night at 9, 8 Central right here on the Weather Channel.